The 5-0 Podcast.
5-0 Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the 5-0 Podcast. Today we are here with Jessica. I'm really excited to have her on. This outdoorsy North Carolina girl is a law enforcement officer who has experienced quite a bit during her life and career. Jessica just got her bachelor's degree and plans on getting her master's. Due to things she's experienced as a child, she is passionate about advocating for children and being a mentor for young women in life and in law. She is a woman of Christ who lifts others up in faith and is currently in the process of writing 2 books. I'm excited for you guys to get to know her more. So for our listeners who do not know who you are yet, why don't you give us just a quick bio, very quick, because we're going to peel back all the layers and get to know you more, but you have the floor.
Okay, all right. So my name is Jessica. I'm from North Carolina. I'm 25, about to be 26. I've been in law enforcement since 2020. I started at a pretty large police department, and then I went to a smaller one. I left a abusive marriage, so that was the reason I had left. And then I kind of got into law enforcement. Is this one of your questions later? Why I got to law enforcement?
Yeah, it will be, but you can totally touch on it.
Okay. So I had like a little bit of a unique experience.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up like wanting to go into law enforcement. Like, never crossed my mind I was gonna go be a nurse, that kind of thing. And then it was kind of like literally when I say it was like God's calling, like, hey, go here. I was like, okay, all right, man, that's what I'm gonna do. So that's how I got into law enforcement. I currently work with the North Carolina Demand Reduction Task Force as the law enforcement engagement team leader. I do a lot of things outside of work. I help take care of my little brother and sister that I helped growing up. I hunt, I fish, I love to hike, anything outdoors. That's my thing. Jesus is my man. Okay. That's a quick rundown.
I love it. And we're going to touch on all things that you talked about. But I love, like I said, Jesus is my man. Me and Jessica connected through like a faith-based first responder chat and through Instagram. And I'm just really excited for you guys to get to know her more. So first, we're going to go over, I ask every single guest this, about your family life and growing up. And I know yours is deeper than most, but it does, connect with why people are either called or choose, to go into law enforcement. Some people, like me, I had a totally different upbringing, but it really does speak to how you are as an officer and what your passions are when it comes to helping. So tell us about your family life and growing up.
It was different. It felt hard growing up, I'll say that, but like looking back now, I'm thankful and I'm grateful for it because I've been able to take it and turn around and use it for good. It really helps me connect with people at a different level. So for me, growing up, my mom left when I was 2. She chose drugs and men, unfortunately. So she was kind of in and out. And then at one point, she was gone for like a long span of time. I remember when I was 8, I didn't know where she was at, but I knew that I knew she was somewhere. And if I got the chance to talk to her, I wouldn't know what I would say, but I knew that she was my mom and I knew that I loved her. And so I remember going to bed like a few nights and you remember those locked diaries? I had a locked diary.
Yes, I remember.
I unlocked my little diary and I wrote like pages and pages of just front and back of nothing but I love you because I didn't know what to say, but I asked my dad to give it to her and my dad was like, I don't we don't know where she's at. So that was that. And then so we lived down like a family driveway. So it was like a cow pasture or pond. My grandma's, my great grandma's, my dad's, what was a shop, and then my dad's, and then my aunt's, and then some more like land back there.
So you grew up on a street with pretty much your entire family there.
Yeah, it was my family. Like the driveway's name is like my family's last name.
Oh, whoa. Okay, cool.
So yeah, and we had like cows, pigs, chickens, goats, the whole 9 yards.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I would say I was at my grandparents' like more than I was my house to say. Things felt, I don't know if they were always this way or if I was just, blind to it, I guess you could say, because I didn't really start to, like, pick up on things until I was, like, 11 or 12. My dad, he would be, like, angry all the time, and then he would take me to ball tournaments, and he would literally be falling asleep driving, but he was nodding off because he was high.
Right.
And so I remember one time I asked him, or I didn't ask him. I said like, "Daddy, wake up." Sorry, that's what I say. It's probably a Southern thing. We don't say dad or pa or whatever. We say daddy. Most of us do.
I love it.
And so I would say, "Daddy, wake up," and he would look at me and he said, "I'm not effing sleeping." And so that was bad. Um, and I can remember all of the places that I would have to go and sit. One time I walked home actually, when I was 18. I don't know why no one would say anything, and I feel like it might be a Southern thing, like, the whole, "Let's cover it up," like, let's act like nothing's wrong," or maybe they're oblivious to it, because when I was 15, I think I was 15, I tried to say something to my stepmom and my grandma and be like, "Hey, like, he's taking me to these places, like, I see what he's doing." "No, you need to mind your business," is what they would tell me. "You need to mind your business.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're a child and he's an adult." And I'm like,
Right.
"Right, right, cool. This is great. Love that for me." Um, and so, um, whenever I was 18, I knew that I wanted to say something to him, and I asked my grandma to say something, and she was like, "No, like you're stronger than all of us. You should do it." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. My strength is being used against me." But like, she's his mom, so I feel like she should say something because I'm the child and he's not going to respect me. So I
Right.
kind of like I self-initiated my own little investigation, and I had some hunting binoculars. And so
Oh my god. You were already a police officer.
Yeah, so I waited for him to go out of the driveway one day, and I followed him from a distance. I was at my grandma's. I didn't live home, at this point. And so I waited for him to go out of the driveway, and then I went and followed him, and I knew that he would go and his pattern was basically, he'd get his prescription pain pills, and then he'd overuse them, and then he'd go buy them off the street, and then he would sell them whenever he needed them or whatever. So those were the exchanges that he would make at this point. That was before it kinda progressed and things. And so I followed him, went to, a store across the street from the gas station. I knew that he would go make his little hands at. And I watched him, and then I didn't say anything right then. And I also had wanted one of my guns to go hunt with, and he like got really mad about it. And I was like, "This is weird." So I went and looked in the safe, and all of the guns were gone. And I was like, "All right, then." And so then I still didn't say anything. Like I'm kind of one of those like I'm not gonna ask a question. Not that I don't ask questions I don't know, but like if I'm coming to you about something, I'm about to have my receipts, okay? And so um I was at college and I came home one night and I was going to go stay with my high school boyfriend at the time. Like I dated him throughout high school and his family just like literally took me in as a teenager. And so I was going to go stay there, and it was like 9 o'clock at night, and he asked me where I was going, and I said, "I'm going to, Blake's mom's house," and he was like, "Oh, she doesn't care?" And I was like, "No." He was like, "Well, I do." And I said, "Well, I'm 18 and I don't live here." So, well, we got into it, and he got in my face this close. I confronted him about the drug problem, and he was like, "You're lying. You need to tell me who told me, who told you, yada, yada, yada." And I was like, "Nobody had to tell me. This is the receipts. I have the receipts." And so then he told me I could, even though I wasn't living at home, he told me I could pack my stuff and get the beat out his house. And so I left and I never went back. But then like a
Wow.
month later, he was like, "I don't know why you left. I didn't tell you you had to leave." And I was like, "That's funny. Okay, all right then." So that was that. And like nobody wakes up and wants to be an addict.
Right.
That's unfortunately not how it is. Most of the time there's something that they're dealing with, they're coping with. It's the same way that my mom is. Like my mom used drugs because she had stuff happen to her in her childhood that
Right.
she didn't deal with. And I skipped this part, but whenever I was little before my mom left, me and my sister would go over there, but there would be times that my sister didn't go and she had a boyfriend and my, I guess you could say, technical uncle. I don't like to use their names because, yeah. And I really didn't even, I was kind of like afraid to even really tell anyone until the last person died. Like I wasn't very open about it.
Yeah.
Uh, and most disclosures I tried to tell as a child, but and it's the same reason I am the way I am with kids and how I ask them questions and then why I'm good at it. Because if you asked a question a certain way, they're going to shut down. So for me, I
Right.
told them, I told them like a kind of like a normal thing that child says whenever they're being sexually
Right.
abused.
Right.
Uh, and so I would go there, but there would be times that my sister didn't have to go. And I would tell them I don't want to go. Like, I don't want to go if they're there. And nobody really picked up on it, I guess. And my dad told me that I was too young to make that decision for myself. And my sister, she could make that decision because she was older. And me doing what I do now, I'm like, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And
Mm.
there was a few times I ran away from my mom's. She lived like we lived in, like, or she lived, because I went back and forth between my aunt. She lived in, like, a trailer park, and it was a trailer all the way in the back, and I ran to the neighbor's house one time, and I was, like, little, but my aunt and uncle had me memorize their phone number, and
Oh,
so I
wow.
called them on the phone, and I was crying, and I was like, "Please come get me. Like, please come get me." But I only remember that one time, but I called her recently because I just wanted to know, like, basically, like, did y'all know that something was going on, or did you
Mhm.
just do that out of, like, safety? And so I called her a while back, and I was like, "Did you know? Like, did you?" She was like, "Well, we told your mom not to leave you with them, but, like, we didn't know." And she asked me if something happened, and then I finally, I broke down and
Yeah.
told her what happened. And so for me, when I got into actually, I didn't even, because it wasn't dealt with as a child and I didn't have a safe place to express it, meant like, I don't know if you've ever read the book. I think it's The Body Keeps the Score. Um, like your brain just shoves it to the back of,
Right.
and so I just didn't even acknowledge it. Like I was like, nope, didn't happen. I would like I would have, like, dreams, not dreams, they were nightmares actually,
Yeah.
as a child, but, like, I would be like, "No, that's not real," like, "No." And then it wasn't until I got into, like, the domestic violence marriage that it I guess when you get to a certain point and you start tacking on things, it just comes flying forward. And so after that, I was like, "Okay, I kinda like, I have to deal with this." And
Yeah.
so I started processing it, and once I processed it and I got to a certain point in my career, I learned what trafficking, like human trafficking was, and I was like, "Okay, I wasn't just sexually abused as a child, it was literally trafficking." Like, they would they would make me do these things, and then I would have to talk to other men on the phone and tell them, like, what it was. They would feed me raw meat, they would withhold food from me.
Oh my god.
It was awful. It was literally awful. But
I have the
something,
chills, like, on my
yeah,
arms.
yeah, something that I always felt gravitated what like towards was human trafficking, but I still was like, I don't really know why. But then when I actually learned about it, I was like, oh, that's exactly what happened to me. And
Yeah.
so because of that, I started finding a way to get involved. And so I found my way to the North Carolina Demand Reduction Task Force. And I would say that like really almost helping, it gives you a way to heal because it gets it out and it's taking your own story and it's helping use
Yes.
it for the good. So like it's like I told you, like you can't change the cards you were dealt, but ultimately you can change how you play your hand. And ultimately we all have a choice to choose in what we do. And I just choose to make my story help others. So
How do you feel that your childhood and the way you grew up shapes you as a person and as an officer today?
Oh, a lot. I genuinely do not think that if it were not have been for those things, I would not be able to pick up on things the way that I do. I wouldn't be able to talk to people the way I do. Like literally the other night, um, I went to a call or whatever, and the girl was a drug user, and I always ask whenever I deal with that. I always ask because nobody really takes the time to see them and talk to them, and I like to. I love people, but by the time I get home at the end of the day, I am peopled out. But like I sat down on her level and, I asked her, why. And she told me that her mom introduced her to drugs at 14. And so she didn't
Wow.
even have a chance at life. She doesn't know the person she was before that. And so, like, you never know someone's story. And if you can just give them like a little glimpse of hope, and even if they never change, you can't help someone who doesn't want the help. And that's what I learned growing up because I grew up trying to save the people around me. You can't help them if they don't want the help. We're not Jesus. We can bring people to Jesus, but we're not Jesus. And so it's kind of just that little glimpse of hope. I I can talk to people in a way that maybe my coworkers can't. I'm usually the calm in the storm to bring it down, and I'm really able to see people. And it also, again, helps me to detect things. I'm super good at picking up, hey, that's not normal. Like, let's look into that. And then, like, I think I skipped this part, but whenever I was in high school, my stepmom worked night shifts, and my stepmom didn't know what was going home at nighttime. So, like at 10, I took care of my little sister who was a newborn, and then at 12, I took care of her who was 2, and then my little brother who was a newborn at that time. So I would go to school, and I would think I was in 7th grade, and I had a teacher, and I would I would get I'm really smart, like not being cocky or anything, but I'm smart, and so
Yeah.
I would get my work done really fast, and I was really tired, so I would go to sleep. And this particular teacher, she sent me to the principal's office and she made me call my dad. And I called him and I was like, you know, he's like, "Why are you calling?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, I'm sleeping in class." And he was like, "Okay, what's the reason?" And I was like, "'Cause I'm taking care of like your kids in the middle of the night. So I don't know what you want me to do." And then by the time I got into high school, I would work 2 or 3 jobs at a time. And the jobs were a distraction for me because I also figured out that if I wanted to get out of the situation, my only really way out was like education. And it like when I was 13 or 14, I did start getting into things that I didn't have any guidance.
Right.
Nobody
I was
was
going to say, your mindset must have been so strong as such a young person by saying, let me choose work, let me choose education
Yeah.
instead of choosing the things that were literally readily and easily available to you.
Yeah, and, like, one time I actually, like, I think I was 18, I found my dad's, like, stash, and I freaked out, and I flushed it down the toilet. Listen, I tell people that, and they laugh, and I'm like, "No, but I'm serious." Like, he probably wondered where his stuff went. I freaked out, and I flushed it down the toilet.
Oh, God.
But, Emma and Wyatt, they're my, like, literally my motivators, like, because they don't have anybody to look up to. And it's not that, there's anything wrong with the other people in my family, but I feel like
Yeah.
I don't know if you know who Eric Thomas is, but I listen to him a lot and I have for years. It's
Uh-huh.
it's about setting the standard. Because I know that if I don't set the standard for them, you know, if I went and got a bachelor's degree and didn't have, anything, no help, no nothing, then the least they can do is graduate high school kind of thing.
Right.
So all of those things have helped me and like shape me into the person that I am now.
So, for someone who's listening to this and they're dealing with children at work or maybe get a call where it has to deal with children and they had a normal, regular upbringing, no childhood trauma, what advice would you have for an officer to help them connect with children of trauma? Is there any like triggers or things that we could notice as a person who doesn't know it firsthand?
Oh, absolutely. So, one, you know, let's, a lot of times I can remember when I was a child, if you would have, if an officer would have stopped my mom's car, and you would see me in the back seat, you would have saw a person next to me and they probably would have had their hand on my leg as a child. When you stop cars or whatever it may be, like, don't just look at the person that's driving, like, pay attention to what's around them. And I know everybody wants to look for drugs and guns, and that's fine, I agree with all of that stuff, but also pay attention to literally, like, what's in the car. And so,
Yes, that's very,
and then
very
whenever you talk to kids, get on their level and listen to them. you know Try not to get so focused on just pounding them with questions because that's kind of what happened to me. Well, you need to tell me. We can't help you if you don't tell me. That shuts a child down. And for me, like how I tried to tell, and it's really a typical, I feel like, a way that I've never had a child disclose to me this way, but this is just what I tried to tell them. I went to school, I had bruises on me, and my teacher took me out of the hut, and I told them that my mom's boyfriend tickled me. I didn't know any other way to tell them what was going on. And so, another example for me as a child, and this just goes to show you, it can be something random that's a trigger. I had a SpongeBob tent, and they would make me go into that tent. So for me, SpongeBob is a trigger. I know it sounds stupid, but it's
Interesting.
something so
No, yeah. If something random can trigger someone for no reason, maybe there's some sort of connection.
if it's something random, just kind of think, okay, is there a reason that this is, triggering them to say? But now I've gotten to a point, when I first started processing it, I couldn't. But, now that I've processed it and I've, healed some from it, it doesn't bother me. Like, I can say that without it bothering me to say. So just kind of keep in mind of those things. And then, like, just literally just listen to them, make them feel seen and heard, and then give them choices because they've already had their choices taken away from them. They've already had their dignity taken away from them. When you give them choices and say it's I don't know, like the child wants a juice. Well, you go to get them a juice and the store doesn't have the kind of juice that you want, but say you bring them back a different juice, and then they have a breakdown because you were just like their abuser who didn't give them a choice. And it's just something so random, but it's just something to think about. So those are the kind of things that I would say.
Yeah, that's like really powerful to even think about because those are small things that maybe an officer like me wouldn't understand or connect or know. And I think it's really amazing that you're working in this space because you have a special way of connecting and understanding and like you said, like you're healing yourself while you're healing others, which is really cool because as you're healing them, you're healing like a part of you.
Yeah, for sure.
So you said you never planned on becoming a police officer in the first place and that it was kind of just like a calling almost. How how the heck did someone like you with all these odds stacked against them become a police officer?
So I originally wanted to be a nurse. I had gotten quite a few scholarships to go to college. So I was a pre-nursing major. I went, and my first semester, when I tell you I flunked that bad boy, I flunked it, okay? But when I left home, like, I was so worried about, okay, what's going on with the kids? Like, who's taking care of them, like, at nighttime? Like, they slept with me every night. Like, my little sister, she would, and I didn't tell you this part, but I'll tell it to you now. Whenever I was 13 or 14, I would run away and I would never get caught. So this is something to think about with like runaway juveniles and things like that. But this particular time I had intended to run away. I had dated this one guy and we broke up, whatever, and then I didn't like want to date his friend. We were just friends. Like, we were just really good friends, but he listened to me. He made me feel seen and he made me feel heard, and like I gave him literally all of my vulnerabilities. I told him, "Yeah, I can probably get away for a few days and nobody's going to notice. The only reason somebody's going to notice is because my little brother and sister are going to ask." Because nobody really paid attention whatsoever. Everybody was just, I don't even know. They were just all over the place. And so I had told him all those things. I told him I hated home. I got yelled at, screamed at every day. Nothing was ever good enough. Despite all of the things I was doing, literally nothing ever felt good enough. And so I had planned to run away, and me being so naive, we would talk on the phone for hours, and he was way older than me. I was like 13, 14. He was probably 21, 22.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. And so he would go on these long work trips, and I didn't know what he would never tell me what they were. I was just like, "Oh, that's cool. Like, we're just talking away, whatever." And he called me one night and he was like, "Hey, I'm leaving town tonight. Do you want to go?" And I was like, "Heck yeah, I'll go." Like, let me pack my stuff. And I was like, well, what do I need to bring? And he was like, just a little bit of clothes, like food, hotel, all that stuff is covered. And I was like, all right, okay. And I was like, well, where are we going? Well, I can't tell you that. And I'm like, okay, well, I still want to get away. And I said, okay, well, when am I going to be back? And he said, well, I can't tell you that either, but if you want to come back, I'll bring you back. And I was like, all right. It definitely raised my red flags, but I still,
But you still were wanting
it's
to
just
rebel.
better than home. I thought I
No.
was getting I was like, I'm about to get me a little vacation, I'm about to get away. So, and that's something to think about with juveniles when they run away. It's like, what are they running from and what are they running to, kind of thing. So for me, I thought I was getting a better deal, but little did I know that this guy, he was heading for Texas and he ended up getting picked up on drug stuff.
Oh,
He did not have any intentions to bring me back. The only
oh my
thing
gosh.
that saved me to this day, and I literally get chills, is my little sister. It was later that night, so I thought I was gonna be able to sneak away, and she has this pink teddy bear, and she still has it to this day. It's so funny, the head's about ripped off, and she's got a ribbon. She would rub the ribbon every night when we'd go to sleep, and she came I heard a little knock at my door, and she was standing at her door, and she came dragging her teddy bear, and she was like, "I'm ready to go night-night," and I was like, I had my window open, getting ready to climb out.
Oh, wow.
And so I didn't have a phone. I used Kick, like the app Kick, and I think I used like a Text Now app. I I had texted him through the
Wow.
Text Now app and I was like, I can't come. And so I shut my window and we went to sleep.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Because you would have been a missing juvenile in another state.
Yeah.
Who would have knows? Oh my God.
Yeah, it was bad. Okay, I've got ADHD. Where are we at with this question?
Oh my God. No, you're fine. No, you answered it. I was gonna say, um,
Story how I got into law enforcement. Okay.
yeah, how you got into law enforcement. Like, when did you decide, like, I'm gonna apply to be a
Okay.
police?
So I came home. I had that rough semester, came home. I applied to nursing school here. I got in, took all my prereqs or whatever. And I was working at the hospital, but then I went through a little bit of a hard breakup from my high school boyfriend. I guess you could say it was hard. It is what it is now. I don't really care. But at that time it felt hard. And me being me who avoided things, and that was because I learned to do it as a child because I had to isolate. So it's something that translate into adulthood until you deal with it. And so I was like, I'm just gonna run away because at me, oh, I'm a runner. Like I'm a track star, okay? And so I was like, I'm just gonna run away. It'll go away. Like it'll all come out in the wash kind of thing. And so I had went and enlisted into the military. And I was getting ready to leave. And I think it was like February something of I don't even know what year. And I had like 2 months until I was about to leave. And I worked at a hospital and the unit that I worked on, they would pull people to go sit with psych patients in the ER. And so this particular day, I got pulled to go sit with this woman. And mind you, I had been praying for like 3 or 4 days because I just wasn't like in your heart, you kind of know when something's like, ooh, this probably isn't a good idea, but I'm still going to do it anyways, just because, why not? Kind of thing. And so it was kind of impulsive for me to go join the military, but I just wanted to get away. And so,
It's like a way of running away.
yes,
Another version, a safer version, or is it safer? I don't know.
yeah,
You
it's
know,
falling
like,
out of mind.
yeah.
And so I was working at the hospital, and there was a girl, she had taken off from the hospital. She went and ran, and there's like a bad area right beside the hospital. There, the policy is you're only supposed to follow them until a certain point, and then like the security guards or whatever at the hospital, and then the police have to bring them back. Well, they're really slow to respond, and the security guards are wimpy. Sorry. Um, they just didn't do anything, and it's not their fault or anything. But maybe they were taught that way. I don't really know. But by the time the PD had got to me, I had got her back to the hospital, and I mean, this girl was like, she's high on meth, and so she's
Yeah.
like,
Strong.
yeah, she's having like a crazy episode, and so we ended up getting her. I got her to the bay doors of the emergency department. We got her back into the room, and they handcuffed her to the bed, like with well, no handcuffs. She's flipping out or whatever, and she looks at me, and I was trying to talk to her, and she was like, "Well, you don't understand because you're Miss Goody Two Shoes. You have it perfect." And I looked at her, and I said, "Ma'am," I said, my parents are drug addicts. I'm human too." And she just sat down, and she just like completely like just flipped. And she calmed down. She was like jerking on her handcuffs on the bed, like flipping out, "Let me out, this bitch," whatever, the whole 9 yards. She sat down and we started talking. And out of nowhere, the way that the door is set up, so weird. This is your this is my preparedness. This is your door right here. Well, I would sit halfway in the room and halfway out. And so I was halfway in and halfway out, and I was sitting in my chair, and she looks at me randomly and she goes, "Look around you." And I was like, there's 3 cops standing there, because they had to, if they're violent, they would make the PD sit with them. And
Right.
I was like,
Yep.
"There's 3 cops standing there." And at least the time she was still escalated, so they were only gonna leave 1 with her, but the other 2 hadn't left yet.
Right.
And she said, "That's what you need to do. You have an outreach and you can't do it here." Oh, I get chills every single time they say
Happened.
that.
She said,
Yes, and I literally about
"Oh,
came up out of my chair. Oh, but I literally get chills every
I
time
have
I
the chills too. That is
and
insane."
I came up out of my chair, and I called the BLAT, which is it's the Basic Law Enforcement Training Academy director. And I said, "How do I sign up for this?" And I had been praying on it, and I told, like, basically I had said, like, "Okay, God, like, I'm lost. I'm really confused. I don't know what my purpose is.
Right.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I don't think it's supposed to go join the military. Was it something I always wanted to do? Yes. But I just don't think it was the right thing at that time." And so I called the BLAT director, and he was like, "Yeah, but the paperwork is due tomorrow at like 3 or 4 o'clock." And I was like,
Oh my god.
and I mean, like, it's like the F3 is like 18 pages long.
Right.
For me and all the jobs I had as a teenager, it was gonna be like 30 pages.
Oh my god. So you have to do all your history.
Yes, I had to do everything. I had
It's
to
my
get
least favorite part of
paperwork,
every application.
had to go find a sponsorship. And he said, "If you can be in my office tomorrow by 3:30 or 4 o'clock, we'll sit down and we'll talk." And I literally was on the WOW, which is the things that the nurses carry around. I literally was filling out my paperwork on the WOW. I filled it all out. I left straight from work, went to a sheriff's office, got a sponsorship for BLAT, went to a later open urgent care, got the physical. I showed up at his
Stop
office
it.
like 30 minutes before, and he said, "I have never seen someone do this that fast, but okay, let's talk." So we talked. He said, "Okay, you start in a month." I said, "A month?"
What?
Those are things that you're supposed to prepare for, which I was going into the military, so I was already in shape. I was fine and everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's what I've done ever since. So,
Wow.
yeah.
You were truly, they say, you don't choose this career, it chooses you. And I definitely think that this career chose you, and I think that it was a calling from God. You're a woman of faith, and it's something I want to talk to you about. So,
I literally feel like when God calls you to it, if he calls you to it, he's going to bring you through it. Like,
yes.
because every single time in my life when I have literally just trusted him, like, even if it felt like we was off-roading, like, I mean, dragging me by the arm, like, I'm like, "Dude, what are we doing? We ain't coming up for no air," kind of thing. Even
Yeah.
all of it, like, even if I didn't know how I was gonna do it, I mean, there's been so many times in my life where I was like, "Man, this is hard. Like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this, but I'm just gonna trust and just go." And every single time, it's brought me through. So
How do you feel like you can incorporate your love for God and what he's done for you in your life, like truly saved you because you could have gone a very different route.
Mhm.
How do you incorporate it into policing, and how is there any advice for others that are kind of trying to do the same? Like they love God and, you know, they're women and men of God, but like how do they incorporate it into policing?
So absolutely. So, it can be very controversial to say, and I think that's really what people struggle with is, the controversial aspect of it. But, and this is something I shared not too long ago is that, we all have a story. You can't save yourself, and you can't save your kids or whatever it is from their testimony. That's what God has for us. But, just sharing your testimony and literally whatever it is that you've done, it doesn't matter what it is, you know, when you give the glory to God, like it's that's a way to disciple. So for me, when I share my testimony and someone's like, how in the world, like they're just like, and for me, I'm like, I'm my worst critic. I'll tell you that right now. Like I beat myself up. I'm like, I'm not doing enough. And then everybody else, like my friends will be like, I literally do not know how you do it all. Like, how do you do it all? And I'm like, literally the will of Jesus. That's it. That's
You're
all I
so
got.
right. Yep.
That's it. I don't know what I'm doing here.
You don't realize how much you do until someone maybe points it out.
Yes, exactly. And so for me, the Bible tells us that, we're the salt and the light of the earth and, we got to shine that light. And so for me, I'm a very bubbly person. And so for someone who might be having a bad day, you know, or even if you have a coworker, and I've had this happen, who just, you might have a coworker who just might be a mean person. They might be a hateful person, whatever it is, that kindness that you still like, you don't give in to them or whatever it is, somebody's gonna eventually question that and be like, "Why is this well, why no, I don't understand, like, why is she so kind?" All of those things, put together and then, again, somebody having a bad day, if somebody brings it up to me, I'll easily have a conversation with them. We can't force it on others. I've never been one to force it on anyone. I have two friends in particular. They had experienced some basically like some hurt. One was actually atheist, and I never really had a conversation with her, but I just always like kind of like sprinkled sprinkled, the sprinkle juice. I
Right.
sprinkle it into my own story. And so I never pushed it upon her. And then one day she randomly texted me and she was like, I want you to know that, like, you really helped me in my faith journey just seeing you, like, I didn't believe in God, and she has a very, very good relationship with Jesus now, which is amazing. I have another friend, and
So
she
amazing.
she's the same way. She's like, "Jess, I don't think you understand." Like, she had this other one, she had experienced church hurt, basically, like, and, that's the thing about it is like church hurt and things like that, they really turn people away. And so for that friend in particular, she was like, just seeing your life and how you flourished and how you always. So for me, it's kind of like I know that I wanna get to somewhere, but even if I'm not there, I'm going to praise God in the hallway. And so I have this thing over there on my floor. It says, "Thank God for what you have and trust God for what you need." It's like a little old-fashioned window. And so it's kinda like that. So anywhere that I've wanted to go in life, I trust God that He's gonna bring me to it. Even if that door's not open yet, I'm gonna stand in it and I'm gonna wait for it to open and I'm gonna praise Him for what I already have. And so just people seeing that is a way to sprinkle Jesus.
Just with, your like you said, your story and your testimony and where you're at now, if one person learns of your story and the way that your faith is, there's no other way that they can't believe that there is something else that
And
brought
that's
you to
something
where
I
I'm at.
actually that's something I actually pray often. I will like literally like I'm applying to a state agency right now. And one of the things I had said when I started praying on it was like, God, like let this happen in a crazy way so that like it could be no other way but you. Like
Right.
if I were to talk about it, it would be no other way than him who got me there.
And that's already your story. I feel like you've already landed in your life in a crazy way, but in a beautiful way. And I think that, you know, your testimony is what is going to encourage others to have not just maybe they won't go with God, but they might be able to believe that they can not be a product of their circumstance at the very
That's what I
least.
tell everyone all the time. Even the girl I talked to the other night, I told her, I said, "Has anyone ever told you that you don't have to choose this for yourself? I know that it was brought to you, but you don't have to choose that. And it's not too late." She was 24 And she said, well, I don't, some people tell me that, well, you'll be your old self. Well, I didn't have an old self. I didn't, and I was like,
Right.
and that's okay. Like, but you can choose different. And I asked her, have you been in treatment? And she told me, no. And I said, well, has anybody ever told you, any resources? And I keep a little handy dandy book. And I went to my car and I looked through, found a resource, and I left her a note, and I said, here's a number that you can call if you need it. You can't force people, but the least you can do is give them a resource to reach out.
Them a resource and give them help to get them even just one step
Yeah.
above
And then when I
their
left her, she was like, thank you for taking the time to do that. You didn't have to do that. And that's something that makes me think, like, it really bothers me when like, I know that there's officers out there who they just get so annoyed and, like, caught up, but, like, they're human too. Like, if you just treat people, I genuinely have not I really haven't had any issues as an officer, to be honest. But if you know how to talk to people, like, I even have people who, like, literally hate cops, and they're like, "I wish everybody was like you." And I'm like, it's not
Yep.
hard. Like, if you just talk to people, see them for more. I have it's really a gift, I'll say that, an ability to see people and things beyond the surface level that
Right.
allows me to connect deeper with someone.
Right. And that's something that a lot of cops, the reason that they're in this career is because they feel like they have something that they can connect with someone, and you have a very special.
Have a story. What
Yes.
And even the people who were like, this is what I wanted to do since a kid, like, they're very passionate about it. And I think that's awesome. Not everybody has that story, but even the people who have wanted to do it since a child, that is literally awesome. I mean, this sounds bad, that, like, I kind of wish I could say, like, I wanted to do this as a kid, like that.
You're like, I can't say the same either. Like, if you look at what do I want to be when I grow up? It's a dancer or a cheerleader. I have
Girl.
yeah, like something like that. It's never a police officer. That's like a boy thing, It was never. It was never for
Like,
me.
I'm telling you, it's so funny because my senior year in high school, I was taking one of the prerequisites for nursing. My senior year, I took college classes and high school classes, and so I had picked up a brochure of the BLET thing, and I just threw it in my glove. I was like, "This looks cool. Yep, don't think I can do that. I don't think I'm tough enough for that." And I threw it in my glove department box. And then actually, well, what happened is I went and got a different car, and my dad said he was gonna give me the money for the car, and then he sold the car.
Oh my god.
It's not funny. It's kinda
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
So whenever he sold the car, the brochure thing was still in there.
Oh, maybe that person became a cop.
Yeah, who knows? I mean,
Maybe you brought that gift to them. You never know.
So I just, like, didn't. I was like, yeah, I don't think I can do this. And even when I went to the academy, and I was like, man, this is about to be really uncomfortable, and I don't know if I'm like, I literally, I just jump out on faith. Like,
Yep.
even with the job that I'm applying to now, I think somebody asked me, well, what have you done to prepare for this job? I've literally annotated the entire chapter.
My life.
What else? Well, my life experience, yes, but, like, I literally went through and I annotated the entire chapter of what this job relates to on my iPad, because my iPad's my handy dandy little best friend. And I went through and I annotated the entire chapter and had no promises of this job other than Jesus is gonna get me there. That's it.
Yep.
So it's
So you're
but hey,
no, absolutely. And you were talking about your handy dandy iPad. You're writing 2 books. You write down a lot. I know that you document, you write down, you journal, use your Bible. Um, you kind of mentioned that the book was going to be about like blending the Bible with your upbringing, about your siblings. Can you give us a little insight on why you're doing this and what it's going to be more about?
so the one book particular, I'm actually handwriting this one. The other one I'm not handwriting, but this one I started it because my little sister had came to me, and I think she was 13 at the time, and she was really upset, and she just wanted to talk. And, like, literally, I actually had seen I had dealt with another girl at work, and they were 13, 14, 15, something along those lines, and the one little girl, her I think her dad was in prison and maybe her mom had died, and, um, her uncle and aunt had custody of her, and they used pills, so they nobody really tended to her, and so she was getting into the same way that I was. She was getting into stuff that she wasn't supposed to at a really young age, and they had gotten into a fight at the football game, and they went over to the gas station, but they had been drinking, and so I saw the little girl, and I don't know, I was like, "This reminds me of me when I was her age." And so, somebody had told me the situation, and so I sat down on the sidewalk with her, and I talked to her, and, I told her, "You don't have to choose this," and she told me about her home life and everything. I said, "If you want out, I know that it's easy to, get involved with these situations because you feel like you're kind of, masking what's going on at home." I said, "But there's other ways to do it." And then not long after, my little sister had came to me. I think she might have it wasn't her first heartbreak, but I think she honestly might have been, like, upset over my dad, and I know how she is. I can read her like the back of my hand because she's just like me, like, she won't come out and tell you that something's wrong, but you can kind of read her body language. Like, her face will get really flushed, her eyes will be teary-eyed, she'll constantly be glancing somewhere else, she'll be, like, looking out the window if I have her in the car and something's on her mind. You can see her eyes watering up, and then she'll start, like, swallowing like she's trying, that throat feeling?
Yep.
Then I'll be like, "Alright, Emma, what's wrong?" And then she feels safe enough where she can let it out. And after I had that talk, I was like, like, really, all I see between, like, both my little sister and that experience I had with that little girl is, like, I see like, that was me at their age, and I didn't have anybody to tell me anything. So, if I can just give someone, it's basically life advice of what I had at 18. I started it when she was 13, and I'm gonna give it to her when she's 18. But somebody said, "You
Wow,
should
I love that.
her sooner."
Love it.
And then I, like, went through and I found all kinds of things, and there's Bible verses and all kinds of stuff. But, if I just had that when I was that age, like, it probably would have helped so much because nobody tells you those things. And if you're someone who, again, like me, self-isolates, I'm not as bad about it as now. I've dealt with it, but back then, no, I wasn't going to tell anybody. I didn't want to talk about it. So if someone has that, then they can just open up a book and see. The other one, and I have three different titles, but they're basically about like, life is full of choices, and no matter what you come from, who your parents are, we have a choice to make of whether we choose to use that. And because a lot of people take, hurt people is how the saying goes. And a lot of people take, my mom used to say all the time, "Well, that's, well, my mom did this, my mom did that." And I don't want to be that way. I can never imagine saying that to my children. But I've forgiven my mom now because, Jesus tells us we have to forgive. It's not a question, like, it is a we must forgive because the measure you give out to others is the measure it's going to be used on you. And so for me, it's basically just like kind of telling the story of, like, how life unfolded and then how I've taken Jesus and incorporated into it, and how we have a choice to make. And it doesn't matter, it doesn't, like, literally, you don't have to be a product of your environment. It doesn't matter what you come from. You can choose to be better. So that's kind of the insight of the two books there.
I love it because you truly have taken everything and you're using it to not only empower yourself, but give back. And do you have any final takeaways, maybe for new officers who are wanting to change a pattern of their lives, who are beginning this career or thinking about beginning this career, but they're like, someone like me can't do this. Like, my parents are doing drugs, or, I didn't grow up with a strict household and I was a bad kid. Could I be a police officer? What would you tell someone who's listening who maybe doesn't think that they could do this career, but have it calling, a feeling that they
Yeah.
want to?
the thing that I would say is that something, and I won't sit here and tell you that I still don't struggle with, like, my parents and things like that, because it's just like I don't know how to explain it. Yes, I struggle with it. Yes, they're my parents, but you can do it. You just have to learn to set boundaries. But for me, growing up, I wasn't taught boundaries because all I saw was toxic. So for me, and like chaos, I lived in pure chaos. So up until a certain point, I literally thrived off of chaos. That was something I had to go and unlearn. But you can,
Yeah.
there's certain things that, if your parents are drug addicts, there's certain behaviors that you probably saw growing up, you know, you know, it's literally the ability to read a room. It is a gift and a curse at the same time. But
Yep.
for me, it's been more of a gift. You learn to read a room. So for me, I knew if my parent came in mad that day and they were screaming and yelling, guess what? I'm staying in my room and I'm not coming out because it wasn't safe. And so you can kind of learn, you can take all of those things that you saw from your home, whether it was you grew up with parents who, you saw domestic violence, you were sexually abused as a child, you know, if you have a bunch of complex trauma or whatever it is, you can literally take all of those things and it will literally be one of the best tools that you ever have on this job. And something that I would say for like, new officers is simply see people. See people and listen to them. You don't have to be, like the knife hand, trooper. Nothing against troopers. Like we have great troopers in our county, but I genuinely have gotten more with people just being kind. Now I will say I'm a little feisty thing, so I'll flip the switch when I need
I
to. Don't
believe it.
worry. Yeah,
Yeah,
don't worry
no,
about that. But most of the time, you don't even have to flip it because people are like,
100%.
literally, people just tell me things. Like I don't ask. I can go for the most randomest call, and somebody will be like, "Hey, these people are selling, whatever," and I'm like, "Oh, great." Like literally, I'm just like, but it.
Like, why? I didn't even ask you that.
I'm like, why? Why did you tell me that? No, I'm not saying, that's not great and everything, but it's like, what is it about me that people are just like, yep, I can tell her.
It's your aura, it's your inviting nature where people
Yes.
feel like they can trust you, which is really good as a police officer because a lot of times people don't feel like they can trust us.
Yes, I literally would just say be kind and use the experiences and life skills that you already have and then apply them to the job. Don't be a jerk. It's that simple. There's a time when it's time for business, point blank, period, end of story. But until you get to that point, sit down and listen to people. Don't rush the next thing. I mean, if you have something, a situation that needs a little bit of more time, don't be afraid to get it wrong.
Yeah.
So
What can we expect from you in the coming future?
I don't.
Feel like you have a lot
I got
going on.
so I got to figure out the whole book thing. I have to figure
Yes.
out how to get this book published, and I
I
have
got a
to.
publisher I can give you.
Okay, that would be great,
Uh-huh.
actually.
Uh-huh.
So I have that going, and then I'm planning to switch to a state agency. So I'm hoping that goes well. I'll be, busy with that for a while.
Yes.
And then I plan to get my master's degree. So that's kind of my goals. And then once I see it, like once I get to the state agency, so like something, and I didn't really say this, something I'm really passionate about is training. So
Okay.
for
I love
me,
that.
I I really like seeing the aha moment that people have. And I'm not an FTO, but again, me and this handy dandy little iPad, I literally have like charts and charts of just different things that if I have, one of my friends, she's an FTO, like, hey, if you have this, like, hey, here's a systematic approach to searching a vehicle. Because if you go to court, whatever, if you search this vehicle the same way every single time, if somebody asks you, no, this is how I search it every single time, I don't steer from that. Well, can I see that? Absolutely. Yes, you can. Here, it's right here. You can.
I love that.
So
You'd be a great FTO too.
so it's
Wonderful.
it's things like that. I just didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get too involved, I guess you could say, where I was because I knew that I wanted to go to a state agency to
Yeah.
um,
And that's totally
yeah.
fair. Like keep growing and keep following your heart and your dreams. And I just want to thank you for being so vulnerable because I'm sure it's not easy to share everything. But there's probably a lot more people that have dealt with similar situations as you that aren't speaking about it and may hear your story and hear how far you've come, and you'll help them open up about their story and know that their testimony can be everything. Like it really can frame the course of your life, and you don't have to be a product of your circumstance, and you are proving that every single day. And that's why I'm so happy that you are on this podcast. If you're open to it, do you want to share like where people could find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah.
You don't have to.
I don't well, yeah, I don't know my stuff off the top of my head.
I'll link it below. So you
Okay.
guys, I'll link it below. If you want to reach out to her, if something resonated with you, I'm sure she'd be happy to talk to you
Absolutely.
and give you advice or, just connect with you. So thank you so much for being here. You are literally incredible. I'm obsessed with you and your personality and your accent and
Not
just
my
like who
accent.
you are. Like you are
Well,
so, if you met you, you would never know what you went through. And um, it's beautiful that you've completely changed your life and you're helping so many people every
well,
single
thank
day.
you for having me. This was exciting.
I'm so happy I did. And I can't wait for other people to hear this. So you're really, really doing the Lord's work, literally.
Oh, yeah.
You really
Well,
are. They
Lord
say
Lord is Lord Shorty, okay?
and you're doing it.
Yes.
Thank you and be safe. I know you're active out there on the road. So be safe, please.
Absolutely.
And
Thank you. You too.
take care.
Bye.